next up, we're going to keep it rolling. We have a really, really strong conversation coming up surrounding equity in cannabis with one of Benzinga's Cannabis Advisory Board members who we love and we all know, Dr. Chanda Macias from Ilera Holistic Healthcare. She'll be moderated by Sammi, Toorish, the Vice President of Investments at Arcadian. Please give them a warm round of applause. This is going to be a fabulous conversation.
All right. I can hear myself, so you guys must be able to hear me just fine. But I think I'm super excited to be here and talking about an extremely important conversation in our industry, creating equity in cannabis, which really starts with acknowledging and reiterating that historically there has not been equity in cannabis, certainly from a political perspective, but that trickles into the economics today. But also, which we were talking about backstage too, requires, like a collective attitude that can change and we can build something better by talking about it and bringing this to the forefront. And I don't think there's many people better positioned to do that than the woman sitting next to me, Dr. Chanda Macias. So excited to be here with you today.
I'm excited to be here too. After 2 years of being separated from the rest of the world, for us to be able to connect in person and to have these different discussions is so important. And so I look at the narrative that's throughout the community now, and there's such an urgent need for representation. So I love to get this conversation going and see where we land with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm sure many people here have heard part of your story at least, but maybe a good place to kick off, just bring us a little up to speed on your background, what brought you to cannabis and led to you being the first Black woman to receive a medical license.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a two-time Howard University graduate, and my PhD is in prostate cancer research. When I started at Howard, what I realized is that cannabis actually could treat the symptoms of cancer. And I saw this reoccurring theme throughout. And I was just like, well, why aren't we studying it? And that's when my mentor said to me, because you'll get locked up, you're Black. And I was like, what? We're scientists. And it's saying that it can save people's lives and it has a true benefit, then why aren't we studying it? So we put that conversation down, and I continued my whole platform in science, became a research scientist at Colgate-Palmolive, launched $2 billion brands, was fast-tracked, earned my MBA at Rutgers in supply chain management. And then there was a calling for dispensary applications in Washington, D.C. So I said, well, I want to do this. I've been looking at this for some time. And so I decided to apply. But even when I applied, it was just one of those things where people said, there's going to be a lot of competition. And if you're going to apply, you probably won't win. And I was just like, well, let that be that. If what's meant for you, no one can take that away. I'm not going to be intimidated by what other people think I should do or what I shouldn't do, but I have to find it within myself to do what I think is right. I applied, and I applied as a non-equity applicant because social equity at that time didn't exist, and I won on my own merit. Thank you. But one thing I realized at the time was that there was very few of us winning. So I'm a woman, I'm African American of Hispanic background. We were not represented. Once I got that license, what I realized is less than 4% of ownership went to people who looked like me. And that's where the real issue started to emerge, Sammi.
Absolutely. And so the topic we're actually discussing is disrupting the patient-to-prisoner pipeline. So can you speak a little bit to how you define that and how creating this marketplace and these programs has has led to that disruption and the impact it's having?
So going back to my story and understanding where I'm pivoting from, a patient became a prisoner. If you had cancer, if you had depression, anxiety, and you used cannabis and was arrested for it, you went to prison. And that was mostly targeted to the African American male. And so as I continue to look at that pipeline and find different ways to disrupt it by changing policies, procedures, regulatory hurdles, what I realized the most is that they don't really want to change it. It's a $40 billion industry. It's generating more money than cannabis today. Why would you want to disrupt the pipeline that is actually lucrative for those in control? And that's when the real hurdles start to come up. That's where the real fight started to begin. So I started to dissect what that really looked like. If you are arrested on probable cause, mandatory minimums, everything was put in place. Communications like Verizon and AT&T made $4 billion off of the prison system alone. So for me, it was just like, wow. But then I also saw another thing is that women were going to prison. They were getting their kids taken away for using cannabis for their ailments or treating their children with cannabis. And so what I started to see is that mothers that were treating their kids that had epilepsy with cannabis were being in prison. That is a problem because I am a mother. And if there's something that I can do to save my child's life or take them out of pain, I'm gonna do it. And so putting a policy or a procedure or something, or law in between the healthcare of my child should be illegal.
Absolutely. Honestly, I don't think we're clapping enough for everything that's been said so far, and some really staggering thoughts around the size of the private prison industry and how that impacts populations, communities, and entire industries. Because what we're circling around here too is that cannabis has never been illegal because of the plant itself, but because of one political agenda or another. And I think that's part of what we're all doing, at this conference and every day in our lives is trying to get past that. And I think that brings up another topic, and I'm know one that you're passionate about and has been brought into everything you do, but the role of education in our industry. Can you speak a little bit to that and how you've incorporated that in your own business operations and just kind of personal philosophy in the space?
So I want to talk about a different type of education that I think might be a little bit valuable for those in the room to understand where we're coming from. And I'm going to take this from a woman's point of view. When in our household, throughout generations, my family always said, you get married, you submit to your husband. And then even when I got married, it was part of my marriage vows that I would obey my husband. And then when I entered corporate America, it was told that I should follow or report to someone else that wasn't someone that looked like me or was a woman. And I subscribed to it. I was a part of the problem. And I say that because, today I look at it and not only was I part of the problem, I perpetuated the issue. I did not stand up when I knew that my voice should have led, and instead of reporting to. When I think about obedience, I should have looked at partnerships with my partner and other people that looked like me. Instead of submitting, I should have asked for mutual respect. Now, if you are in my position today and you ask the man to submit to you or obey you or to report to you, it would be a problem. That difference right there is what I'm talking about. We just want equality. We want equality. And that equality also is representing how you feel as a minority. We want that same equality. And now that we're having this education, is that we want something more, which is that we want to get on a chance to get in the industry. And because we're not on equal standing, we need something to help us thrust up and get to that equal standing. And that's what equity is. Give us a way to pivot in so that we can actively participate and be part of equal standing to all. I know that in my conversation last night with a few that were in this room, we said, who was most pivotal to your upbringing that made you who you are? And I asked 5 men this question. All of them except for one said their mothers were the most pivotal influence on their lives. One of them said 50-50. If you're in here, you know who I'm talking about. The issue is that if you felt like your mom could produce someone like you, why aren't you perpetuating that same narrative with your daughters, with your granddaughters, with women throughout this nation? That's the education I want to give today.
And what resources exist today, or where have you found outlets to educate? Because this sounds like an evolution you yourself have had to have. So what would you advise others who are trying to kind of bring this on themselves? Because it's something absolutely I think every single woman in this room, let alone minority or underrepresented population, has dealt with. Whether it's even just on a Zoom call, sometimes I'm like, should I wear my hair in a bun? Should I put glasses on? How do I make myself more XYZ? So, you know, what has supported you and how do you support others in this evolution and process?
So through the platform Women Grow, that's where I learned to get my voice. I started in Women Grow back in 2017, and there were so many women that were in the same position. They wanted to be a part of the industry. They wanted to know how they can be in programs and also find their way in entrepreneurship, education, careers. And I will say this, is that one, we have to support each other in those endeavors by changing legislation so that it impacts and gives us the ability to be a part of the industry. That's the number one key. Your voice does matter, but also personal leadership means more than you can imagine. I know that in this room, there's some very spectacular men that will say, my wife is even better than I am. Give them the platform, help them raise up, and let them be who the leaders that they're supposed to be. I know that for myself, I say that out of guilt because I am guilty of it and I'm ashamed of it. I'm, showing my vulnerability, but my husband ran one of our first companies together because I was afraid to be the woman in the forefront. My confidence was knocked down because every time I went out there, I was told that I wasn't good enough. And so now,
not necessarily even in words, but in the actions of others or lack of action of others, I would imagine.
That's it. And so now finding my voice, I'm encouraging women and men in this room that look and, have the same story to find your own voice, to find that way that you have the confidence, even though if the door keeps closing down on you, you keep finding, because I said in the beginning, what's for you, no one can take it away.
Needed to pause for the clapter for that one. I think we could tell it was coming. One kind of a shift here, because you're also one of the first, if not the first, Black woman to operate in multiple states as well. Can you speak to some of the challenge? Because I think we all agree one of the inherent challenges in our industry is how different states are, and it's like you have to learn each time the regulations, how to operate, the right way to operate. Can you shed a little light on your own experiences kind of across the country and the states you have experienced in?
Yeah, definitely. So what's interesting is that I told you my background. I've always been passionate about the patient. For me, studying cancer was because it impacted our community. Breast cancer, undergrad, prostate cancer, and graduate school. And knowing that I'm a patient advocate, I had to lend my voice to that. So even though the operating in the different states and driving a business was wonderful in driving revenue, the bottom line. It was the passion to change the hearts and the minds of the community that really propelled me. And going from Washington, D.C., where, being one of the first on the East Coast to be in the marijuana industry, D.C. was the first region to open up. It was just so much coming at us at one time. I was targeted as being a bad person, a drug dealer. We were afraid of raids at the time. And then you feel all that and you learn from it, and emotionally you learn how to deal with it. And then you go into the rural South. And what you find out is that your voice is actually more important where people need you the most versus somewhere that's more progressive. So operating in Louisiana, and shout out to my team members, Mike, I know you're around here somewhere, and sorry, everyone else that's here. The South is the Bible Belt. And the beliefs about cannabis is, it's almost just, inhibitive. Like, we don't want you to participate, even though it's $1 billion industry in my state. And it's because of attitudes. It's because of the prison system. It's about women oppression. I mean, we are losing our rights to just be pro-choice, and we're losing our voice altogether. So having that passion for advocacy and representing people in this room and people in the state that believe the same things that I believe, it is just my God-given responsibility to make those changes. And they're not easy changes, because when you have a system that's in control, for them to give up that control to someone like us in this room, they don't want that to happen. And the battle begins. So I'm not saying that it's been an easy way to pivot, but it's the only way I can pivot, being true to myself. So, and that kind of gets to the point. Thank you for that clap. But that gets to the point where I had to go to West Virginia. For me, entering into a vertical into West Virginia was important, again, for all the things that I said, but there's a community of opioid users that are losing the battle. They are dying. And it is our right collectively, being a part of this industry, to provide an alternate healthcare solution to save our children.
And in our last couple minutes, I think the entire audience would benefit from your advice on, for folks who want to be more involved, either from an advocacy perspective or just have a dream of starting a business in this industry. Thoughts and advice from your own, evolution and experience here.
The best advice that was given to me that I can give entrepreneurs in this room is that start where you are. I know a lot of us will say, I want to be a cultivator, but you never planted anything. Or I might want to be, a dispensary owner, but don't have the skill set in business or even in dispensing to do so. Start where you currently are. If you are an accountant and you want to jump in this industry, go and specialize in the 280E. Understand your niche, and then to start to expand out where you feel more comfortable that your existing skill set starts. Build a team of people that you can truly trust. That is probably going to be the most pivotal advice. A team is like a marriage. If it breaks, then you lose everything. Be very wise who you decide to have on your team, because without a cohesive team building each other every day, you will fall apart. So please be mindful of that. Everyone has a different skill set, and we cannot do this alone. We have to learn to rely on each other. The other thing I would say is that the probably hardest thing to do in the cannabis industry is to find capital, to find funding sources for us. For those that know myself in my story, I had to bootstrap everything. And when I say everything, I mean the stuff I didn't even have. I had to bootstrap that. And in this room, in this opportunity at Benzinga, the reason why I wanted to speak here is to open up these conversations that people who do have the ability to finance minority and women-owned business should give us a shot. I look at myself, I had to bank on myself, but I would have made a couple of millionaires in here if they had banked on me. And so I really wanted to use this platform to bring this awareness that there is some wonderful, critical businesses that are on the brink of greatness, but they need our investors to come in and to accept us from where we are, whom we are, and be willing to make millions of dollars with us.
Too many good quote grabs in here. Somebody better have been videotaping because we're tweeting all of this later today. But no, I couldn't agree more. I think everyone here would love to keep this conversation going, but we are unfortunately at time. So thank you so much. I mean, I learned so much from you over the course of chatting the last couple of weeks and today. And it's fun to be two women on stage. It's not that often where there's not a man next to us. So let's draw a little attention to that. And let's keep pushing all of these goals forward together. So thank you so much for the time.
And thank you for all those in the audience that continue to inspire me. God bless.